All right, hot diggity damn. Hey, how come we're set up this way? Let's get back over here. There we go. So, in case you folks haven't noticed, this is the one and only Pat King, and it's been a while. I will say it's been a stretch since we have had a chat. Actually, I'll actually bring that up there now. Actually, a few folks are probably familiar with it, and some of you who haven't, maybe get a chance to check this out because this was actually before the whole COVID fiasco actually started. This actually was back in 2019 that this happened, and I'll even mention right now that my conversation that I had with Pat, he came across as a really upstanding, a great guy, and it was a very engaging and somewhat entertaining conversation. So it actually shocked me tremendously when I found out that Pat, of all people, was being, well, as I thought at the time and suspected, and I would imagine will be proved correct in this interview, was being politically persecuted for doing nothing more than actually standing up for our inherent freedoms and liberties and against government overreach and government overreach that was so bad that any one of us that were alive today or around at the time realized that what are you doing? Like, why are you going after the truck drivers in particular? I mean, as a truck driver myself, I mean, we are the kind of people you want to talk about isolation. We literally practice isolation on a daily basis. But then it wasn't just that. But think about all the other Canadians that lost their jobs. And I seen that this was something that was happening that was quite tyrannical. Pat noticed himself. And like so many other great Canadian patriots, they took the chance to stand up, and they did it all through peaceful means. We all seen the video. We seen the footage. This was all done peacefully. These people, I mean, the worst they could use is or target them with is what? They were honking the horns. I think that was about the only thing that I ever heard actually said about anyone, because the other accusations, as we found out, proved to be absolutely false. So, the ones when were, it might have been the convoy people who started a fire in a building. Yet that turned out to be a fucking facade. That was bullshit. That was basically like an Antifa type, or people that were probably on the opposite side of things that were doing that. So, and all the other accusations in terms of stealing money from homeless. And no, they were actually giving money to homeless, and they were actually feeding the homeless. So we know that the political persecution, it was something that was, the fervor was ramped up, and people were being targeted relentlessly. And not only did Pat have his reputation tarnished and stained by the relentless attacks on him and his character, but then they even went so far as to charge the man with, and that's the thing with this mischief charge. Like, holy shit, it's just unreal. And then basically that's the whole experience. I mean, how many times have we heard, well, me as a libertarian, where, yeah, most of your charges, actually, the bulk of your charges are things that came after you had your first interaction with the police, because that's how these things work. Like resisting arrest, even by something saying, what do you mean you're going to charge me with mischief? I didn't do anything. They can come up with a myriad of different charges at that point in time. And I remember a lawyer back in the day who had told me personally when I was going through my own ordeal was, yeah, they call it the shotgun approach. And the shotgun approach is basically, you know how a shotgun works, right? If you take a shot with a shotgun, well, with a bullet, you got one chance. But with a shotgun shell, it's a spray kind of effect. So, even if you don't have the greatest aim, a few of them still might stick to your target. And that's what they do. They try to figure out as many charges. So it's not laws that are based on, anything that because of anything that Pat did, like in terms of causing an actual victim, right? There was no victim involved. No, what it was they wanted to build up a case. They wanted to politically persecute him. So they built up as many charges. And eventually what ends up happening typically, and Pat can confirm this himself, is they do a little wheeling and dealing, a little negotiating. Okay, we'll drop this one, but we're going to have to make this one. So it's a way for them to constantly get their conviction rates, keep their conviction rates up, and then make you, as the person that's being persecuted, feel like, oh, well, whew, at least I got a few of them dropped, right? Which at the end of the day turns out to be an absolute farce. But anyways, sorry for a little bit of a long talk there, Pat, but I just want to hand this over to you because I know you got a lot of story to tell, and I want to hear it all. And I'm sure there's actually some information that you might want to let the audience know right now, that something's kind of a breaking news kind of thing that might be the first time hearing it here.
Yeah. So thanks, Bennett. It's been a while since we've talked before. For my audience, for anybody out there, Bennett and I did a interview back 7 years ago now, that with regards to the very first convoy. Bennett did a piece on what we were doing, why it was so informative and justified to do what we did before. And he understood, they're attacking our industry here in Alberta. The implementation of the carbon tax that we were fighting back in 2018, that we were telling everybody this carbon tax is detrimental to the Canadians. And we basically got ostracized by the government. We got called out by every left-wing lunatic that was out there with regards to that. Well, here we are. Let's fast forward now. Let's fast forward to 2022. Again, government overreach, absolute dumpster fire of a management team that we have here in Canada. Everything that we were standing up for back in 2019 has come to fruition. You've got us back in 2022. And what we've done is we exercised their political rights once again here in Canada for a peaceful protest, peaceful assembly, and we were successful in that. Now you have the government of Canada so butthurt that it was, and this is my opinion, so this isn't proven, but my opinion to this is the government didn't have control over this. This was such a grassroots, spontaneous protest that happened that garnered a lot of attention, and a lot of people felt that need that they had to stand up because there was things wrong. And it got really, really big. So let's fast forward now. All of a sudden, they start throwing, like you said, like a shotgun. They take that shot, big spray, and they hit you with every charge they can that they feel that, hey, you know what? We'll give them 14 charges. Hopefully one of them will stick. Hopefully one of them will hit the target. Not only that, then when they went from 14, they dropped it down to 9. So the 9 that they thought they'd be successful at getting, I was actually found guilty on 5 of them. And the 5 that I was found guilty on was council mischief, which is, if anybody knows, a mischief is a very minor charge. Usually allots for a fine. Not very often do you get sentenced to jail over a mischief, unless you're a career criminal. And even if you're a career criminal, you get like possibly 7 days to 30 days in prison if you're a career criminal. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a career criminal. I don't have any charges. I don't have no adult record. I have a young offender record, but hey, what kid wasn't dumb when they were younger? Then they gave counseling to mischief that didn't occur. So they can't prove that the mischief occurred, that other people did. So they're going to charge me with making it sound like I made people commit a mischief that didn't occur. Then I got, what was the other ones? They tried to get me with, they found me guilty on failure to abide by a court order, counseling to disobey a court order. So I counseled people to disobey a court order. And then they got me on obstruction of justice. So those are the 5 that I was guilty on. Mm-hmm. Crown attempted to have me charged and found guilty on those, or on the guilty, attempted to get 10 years in prison for these charges. Now, the 4 that I was found not guilty on were the more severe charges: the intimidating law enforcement, the counseling to intimidate law enforcement, obstruction of justice. And I believe the other one was to counsel to disobey law enforcement, counsel to intimidate law enforcement. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Those never happened. And in fact, I've got it queued up here for you if you want to share it, Bennett. Okay. I'll even tell you what the judge even stated in my case. So if you read at the top here, essentially no violence or property damage occurred over the 3 weeks of the protest, and indeed King counseled against violence. Therefore, the not guilty on the intimidation of law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Then he says in direct, blunt terms in his online broadcast, this massive demonstration involving large commercial trucks and a diverse group of people, some with extreme political views, carried with it significant risk of violence and property damage, neither of which occurred. This was proven in the POEC, the Public Order Emergencies Commission. King advocated forcefully against such conduct and can be credited as a positive influencer in significant respects. Now we move on to the next ones, and we can go into what they stated. In short, King was on the periphery of the leadership group once it arrived in Ottawa, and his online messaging as the protest continued contained significant avoid violence and obey the law messaging. Mm-hmm. All right. So it is fundamental to show people what the crown, or what the judge's verdict was and why he did that. King's period of actual incarceration involved frequent lockdowns. We're talking locked up 68 days, solitary confinement, 33 days within maximum security, all for a mischief, all for counseling to a mischief, for failing to abide by a court order. this is an extreme example of what they did to me. But at the same time, we keep going through it. This is what I was sentenced with. So and this is all for protesting, ladies and gentlemen, protesting peacefully, protesting actually invoking our political democratic right to freedom of protest, peaceful assembly. So I was accredited with 9 months pre-sentence credit. So that means they credited me for the time served. So I served 151 days in prison in these deplorable conditions, and they credited me with 9 months. So 5 months I was in, they credited me for 9 months. That will be marked against count number 1, the counseling to mischief. In my view, a further 3 months, so they gave me 3 more months on top of the 9 months in house arrest. So right now, presently, I'm on day 59 left of my house arrest, which was 90 days. And then it says, in 9 months pre-sentence credit to adequately address the sentencing objectives of denunciation and deterrence. I'm satisfied that a conditional sentence will not endanger the safety of the community and can satisfactorily adjust the principles of sentencing, particularly given this pre-sentence custody that you served and the conditions in which you served it. A concurrent 3-month conditional sentence, all right, will be imposed on the remaining counts. So now I've got my 3 months. After the 3 months, here is basically, what is this one? This one should be, these are my conditions: not to be in the city of Ottawa. You're not to participate in any public demonstrations for the duration of your conditional sentence. You shall remain in your residence 24 hours a day, which I have been. I look at this, Bennett, and I say, hey guys, here's what we were found guilty on. Perfect. Here's your justice. Perfect. To all the left-leaning lunatics out there, here's your justice. You got it. You got your pound of flesh. But oh no. They didn't just get their pound of flesh. And for your first time here, for the people that are in the chat here, I'm going to show you. Oh, this is the wrong one. Let me just pull this one back up again.
I got the right blend thing, or unless you want something else together.
No, because this just came in this morning.
Oh, okay.
So this is what I want to share to show everybody and validate exactly what's going on. Not only, ladies and gentlemen, was the justice served, here it is. Here is the notice of appeal from the courts. This came in this morning. They are now appealing all of the convictions. All right, so now the notice of appeal and notice of application for leave to appeal has finally come in. So this is actually going through, ladies and gentlemen. This came down directly from Bay Street. This has come up from the higher-ups. They are going after counsel of indictable offense of intimidation, where I was found not guilty. As you can see, not guilty, not guilty. Obstructing police, not guilty, not guilty. Counseling indictable offense of obstruction police, I was found guilty of. Disobeying a court order, found guilty. Counseling of indictable offense, disobey a court order, found guilty. Now what they want now, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, take notice that the appellant appeals against acquittal upon grounds involving question of law alone, applies for leave to appeal against the sentence, and if leave be granted, hereby appeals against sentence. Here's their demand of what they did wrong, what they're stating that the appeal is for. The trial judge erred in law and his interpretation and application of the elements of the offense of intimidation. The trial judge erred in principle in his identification and treatment of aggravating and mitigating factors. The trial judge erred in principle by imposing concurrent sentences for the counts relating to disobeying a court order. The trial judge erred by imposing a sentence that is manifestly unfit. Such further and other grounds as counsel may advise in this honorable court. The relief sought, where is that? The relief sought is that the appeal against acquittal be allowed and a conviction be entered on the count of intimidation, or alternatively, that a new trial be ordered, and that leave to appeal against sentence be granted, that the appeal against sentence be allowed, and that the sentence be increased. And the key thing I want to point out to everybody is right here, this section right here. This doesn't come from the counsel. This doesn't come from the Crown that tried my case. Ladies and gentlemen, this is coming directly from the government, directly from the Ministry of the Attorney General, Crown Law Office in Toronto. Now you can see that this is an absolute political prosecution, malicious prosecution, and the government involved in it all. So for the first time, I'm showing that document because I just got it this morning. We held a live last night. My lawyer came in and explained a lot of the parameters and the things that we're going to be going through. Under all of this, ladies and gentlemen, I had no problems with what I was found guilty of. No problem. I wasn't even going to appeal because I was done. Everybody, oh, are you appealing, Pat? You have 30 days to appeal. You're gonna appeal these charges, right? I was, in my mind, I was like, no, I'm not. I'm done. This is somebody else's fight now. I've put my time in. I've paid my penance. I'm done. I just want to walk away from it all. But you see, the government of Canada has an alternative, ulterior motive. Now the government of Canada is coming after me personally.
Well, let me just say something, just one thing about the appeal thing, Pat, because I'm sure you might have gone through the same ordeal. Like I say, when I was going through my own, is even because I too was very unjustly persecuted. But my thing is, I wanted to appeal, but I was told by people in the legal field, and even at the time by I don't know if it was a probation officer, I can't remember exactly who it was, or some of the social work, but basically is if you appeal, the way they set it up for, if you as the convicted or the politically persecuted, if you appeal, the way they lined it out to me was they set it up so but you could very well end up getting even way worse. So the way they painted it to me is if I appeal, well, that could actually end up being even more detrimental for me. So it was a way of kind of nudging me away of don't even think about it. But as we see on the opposite side of that thing, even though your case went through and it was a long enduring case, they had all ample time that they needed or necessary to figure all this stuff out. The judge obviously had lots of evidence at his disposal. He went through it all and drawn on his own conclusion, and the extra references and the words they said regarding your character and your intention that day, it led, and the charges alone. I mean, think about just what the charges are. Once again, there's no one to suggest that you did anything violent or that you committed any act of burglary or vandalism or anything like that. No, this was basically, like you say, just mischief, which could be, just the most simplest thing, right? But the fact that they actually want to appeal, here's the part that I find most disturbing in terms of how, like, the Crown or this justice, the Ministry of Justice, whoever can do this stuff, is okay. But here's how come they can do this stuff to an individual who's already gone through and had to, went through the rigor of going through a trial before a judge, and then they can do this. But is there any penalty or ramification if they were to do this to you? And it turns out that they just wasted more and more of your time and your resources and your efforts, because you're going to have to obviously hire a lawyer to be able to defend yourself in an appeal. Is there any ramifications for these crowns or these attorneys at the Justice Department for them politically targeting you once again? And if it turns out that they're not successful, but you can't get back the time and all that money and energy that you expended in to defend yourself once again. I find that to be absolutely disgusting, Pat.
Well, you don't have like in the States, they have double jeopardy. You can't retry a case, correct? So here we have an absolute dumpster fire of a judicial system that is maliciously prosecuting. Not only that, it's weaponized against us. Yeah. So because the Crown doesn't like what they've told, excuse me, the Crown doesn't like the verdict, and this now has superseded the Crown who tried the case. Now this has gone to the higher ups. It's an embarrassment to the government. It's an embarrassment to the Crown's office. Excuse me. And what they're doing now is they don't give a shit. This isn't about justice at this point. This is a personal vendetta. This is basically they showed that they had no grounds to do what they did. Now that my case has set precedents for other organizers that are still going through court, it's not enough time that they want for those other people, because now the precedence has been set: 1 year in jail, 1 year probation, along with community hours and a little fine. Right. That being said, it's now become political to the point that they are being driven by, so first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, they have to go to the government and ask for funding, to allocate the funding to retry the case. Okay. That means they have to reach out to the Attorney General or to the Minister of Justice to ask if it's possible to retry this case. Now they have to get the funds. Where does that funds come from? It comes from your hard-earned tax-paying dollars. But it's something in behind that is more sinister that people don't realize what this is trying to do. They are trying to overturn the verdict because it's not about myself. It's not about anything against Justin Trudeau or anything like this. What they are attempting to do is make it illegal for any Canadian citizen to protest any discrepancies or any kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Disgust towards government policies. And when we take to the streets and we protest, this is going to set the precedent. So anybody out there right now, left, right, doesn't matter. If you piss off a cop, and we know the cops are going to be a little pissed off when you're protesting, and the cop decides, I'm going to arrest you, you're going to get arrested with mischief. It's already happening. They are already using my case in the courts right now. In fact, they're even using my bail variations as law to go after these other protesters that are burning flags, using my case, my bail conditions as a grounds for these people to get out of jail. They're already using it, guys. They're making it so in Canada, you will never be able to protest again under your Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Well, let me just say, Pat, first and foremost, I just want to mention right now, and I'm glad that you have that with you, because it'll put you in a better mindset to say that, you kind of accept your situation. I guess you don't have any choice at this point anyways, but I just want to say personally, from my personal opinion and perspective, you were even the 5 months that you did serve, I don't think you should have served 1 day, as far as I'm concerned, for these kind of charges, because as we know, they were basically trumped up political persecution charges. There was absolutely nothing had to do with where there was a victim involved, right? That's, to me, that's the point of the whole point of the jurisprudence and the history of our judicial system. It used to be at some point in time, and that's when Canadians were much better situation, was actually for something to be considered a crime, where there was even the potential of locking a person in a cage, was there had to be an actual victim involved. And that the fact that we're in the world today, and once again, I've gone through this myself with victimless crimes that absolutely devastated my life, and now you're suffering, and we're seeing so many others as well. This is a major point of contention that, like Pat's saying, forget about your politics, folks. The point is, depending on who's in power, the government has it set up that if they want to target you, they can, and they can be relentless in the pursuit. And even when you get to the point where you might have some sight of reprieve, which Pat is at today, and good for him to get to the point where he's finally at least getting past this shit, and then the fuckers double down by sending a letter out like that. So it's not even a matter of whether they're going to be successful. And I'll actually ask you that when they'll know if they are going to be successful in being able to bring about that appeal. But think about the mental anguish that it's going to impose on Pat and all the people that loves him and are so grateful that he's released and home finally. Think about what that's going to do to them, whether that actually comes to fruition, whether anything actually comes out of it or not. They're already once again doubling down. To me, this is no better than like spitting on a man's grave or kicking him when he's down. This is a terrible thing, and this kind of precedent, we should all be putting our politics aside and coming together and a show of support for people like Pat who are being politically persecuted in such a way. But anyways, Pat, so I do want to ask you the question I'm sure anyone in the audience would want to know is, when will you know if this appeal will actually go through? Did they give you a date or a time? Or
Well, we're just right now putting in our letter. So there's a letter of response that needs to go, and I'll just bring that up and cue that up for your audience. Oh shit, I just lost it. So now there's a notice of appeal. Sorry, wrong one. I'll show this. It's a letter to the respondent. I'll share this with you. So this needs to be, there you go. We can bring that up. All right. So this is, you're being served. This is I need to respond to this if I've got counsel. Oh, hang on. Wrong one. Basically, it's saying you are being served with legal documents with respect to a Crown appeal against you, acquittal of intimidation of the criminal code, and your sentence imposed by Justice C. Hacklin. You have the right to they're giving me all my rights again, right? Let me bring that up so people can actually see it. So you're bringing up, you have the right to be represented by counsel. Well, no duh. Upon the hearing of the appeal, or alternatively, they didn't give me a date. We have to respond now. But once again, guys, I want to bring this up to everybody to pay attention to this part right here.
Yeah.
This is from the Ministry of the Attorney General, the Crown Law Office in Bay Street. This is not some butthurt Crown. This is the butthurt government that is doing this. This isn't the Crown saying, oh, I lost my case, I want to retry it. No. This is coming directly from the government, guys. So we don't know when it will be decided. We do know that my lawyer explained that it'll go up in front of an appeals board. The appeal board will look at the facts of the case. They will go through all the findings of what the judge has decided on. And once the judge has made his determination, once the board has made their determination whether there is an error in law, then the decision will come through. My prediction, I'll tell you right now, it's going through. You have a government influence right now. You have this coming directly from the Minister of the Attorney General. So the Minister of Justice is actually going to push this through. They don't care. They need this in precedence. Yeah. They're going to go judge shopping, which is something that they do. As much as they say they don't, I've witnessed it myself. They've gone judge shopping. They're lining it up right now to get a judge to overturn the case and find me guilty. But if it doesn't get accepted, the Crown will still try to reappeal again. And at that point, we get into the Supreme Court. And that is where this deserves to be. This is an absolute abuse of power, malicious prosecution, and an absolute politically motivated case. So this needs to go in front of the Supreme Court. Do I look at this and go, oh man, they're coming after me again? Absolutely. My family's been through enough. But do I also look at it as incentive, as motivation? You're 100% right. The best thing they could have did was leave me the fuck alone. They could have let me walk away. That was my plan. I wasn't even appealing. But now you've lit that spark back in me. Now you've got the fight in me coming back now. Now you've got the rest of Canada watching this and understanding what's been going on. And now you've got even more fighters coming. This is enough. And anybody on either side of the fence now, you have to understand this is the time where you want to see the real Team Canada come together. This is when Team Canada comes together. Put your elbows down, folks. Yeah. Put your sticks back on the ice and keep your head up because the body checks are coming.
Right on, Pat. Well, man, I admire your courage and I love your personality and how you're handling this. And to me, I think that's actually, this is the part that's probably most disturbing. And there will be people out there that will understand this intrinsically is I am admiring his courage and that fervor that he has and his ability to put on that such a brave face. But, you know, as much as I admire that, our opponents, the people who are trying to target people like Pat, they actually, that's actually something that they resent tremendously. That bothers them. That's the kind of stuff that keeps them up at night because what they want, the whole point of doing what they did to Pat is the intention is not just to make him tuck his tail between his legs and to never want to show his face again, but it's to make sure you never, ever, ever dare to step outside the bounds of whatever the hell they tell you to, because if the minute you do, well, they want to say, look what we did to Pat. You want to fuck around? You want to fuck around? Okay, well, but this is the thing. This is what has to be done. Now, I will say this. At the very least, as terrible as this situation is for Pat, and once again, my heart goes out to you and your family for having to go through this bullshit. But one thing I will say, because I always like to put a little bit of a white pill spin on things, to be honest with you, because I like being positive too, Pat, is, hey, we're not in the beaches of Normandy, right? We're not choking down mud and fucking swallowing our own blood. So, you know, as much as this political persecution, it's terrible. It's going to be hard on you and your family. At the very least, you are 6 feet, not 6 feet beyond, above or below ground. You are above ground. You have a tremendous amount of people, as you know, Pat, and you know this at this point in time. You have a tremendous amount of people across this country. The one good thing about, you know, the media being the parrots and the voice of these political hacks that are targeting you is all Canadians now know who you are. And there's a lot of Canadians out there who are standing behind you and have got your back. And that to me is going to create a lot of it'll create some angst for sure, but it's also going to create a lot of unity that was already there. Like I say, and Pat's well aware of this too. And there'll be some other things that maybe we'll talk about at some point in time in the future. But there are things even right now, people, that are taking place behind the scenes that maybe some of you aren't privy to. but where a lot of us are, not just for people like Pat, but for all of us to come together to be a real genuine show of force, just like our American counterparts, that have been politically persecuted. Think about how many of the J6ers who were stereotyped as being like insurrectionists and shit, right? And a lot of them did nothing more than take a free tour of the Capitol building, right? So, but one thing we are doing in Canada is we're bringing our own like resources, our own minds, our own sets of unity, our patriotism, and we're bringing this all to bear and bringing it together so that we could, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to challenge this behemoth, the state. It's not just in the courts, but it's at the public perception level, and that's what matters. Is we have to be able to deal this situation proper, and Pat is doing it the way that should be done, is keeping a positive spirit, positive attitude, not looking to retaliate, not looking necessarily for personal retribution, but to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So let's do whatever we can to come together and help Pat and anyone else who's been being personally persecuted. But anyways, in addition to that, Pat, I did kind of, if you wouldn't mind, man, unless there's something else that you kind of want to jump on before that, is I knew parts of your story, but once again, I didn't have it all, and I kind of would like to know a little bit more about. So how did even that day? Let's just go right back to the very day that you were, I don't know, apprehended or charged. Like what was it that day that actually caused them to focus so much attention to you, or was it just the fact that they wanted to that your name was in the media for being a vocal proponent and supporter? But what was it that actually made them want to target you in particular that you could think of?
Well, I can say this much, and I'm just gonna try and pull this up really quick. I was asked to pull this up, and I should have, and I didn't. I don't know why I didn't do this, but I'm gonna pull up I'll keep scrolling, but I'll say this much right now.
Yeah.
What they did was they made me what's called a person of interest. Okay, right. So that's how they got away from charging me under the Emergencies Act. So making me a person of interest allowed a target on my back from basically in the United States, a bolo, be on the lookout. So being that I was a person of interest, they had surveillance on me the whole time. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, I was one of the most safest people in Ottawa during those 3 weeks time, because there were so many law enforcement following me, monitoring me, watching me, making sure I didn't get a step out of line, and making sure that they knew where I was at all times. So when they did that, it was on the basis of my voice. And I'm honest to God saying this. My voice was why they did what they did. And here you go. I'm going to queue up this video for you.
Okay.
Let me just make it a little larger so everybody can see it.
Okay.
Let's go here. Ready? We'll play it. What's that?
You're under arrest, sir.
For what?
For mischief, counseling to commit the offense of mischief, counseling to commit the offense of obstruct police officer, and counseling to commit the offense of disobey court orders. So, could you please step out of the vehicle, sir?
I'd like to get my lawyer on the phone right away.
Sir,
I have the right to a lawyer.
Of course you do.
Yeah, so I'd like to call my lawyer presently at this moment in
Sir, I need to
time.
make sure everything's safe.
Which is why you're safe, man, and you always have been.
I really appreciate that. I don't know who your occupants are. I don't know what's in the vehicle.
All our hands are free and clear. I have the opportunity right now. Okay,
It all stays
so
the same. I'm going to let you talk to that lawyer. 100%.
I need my lawyer to be at the ready because he's waiting to come.
I know it's within your discretion.
Of course, I gotta light the dark, right? You gotta light the dark. I'm being arrested by these officers right now. This officer here, they've cornered me, had me at the ready, and I'm being arrested. We'll talk to you guys soon. Are you live?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Now you hear that. Now that's a key to that. That if you heard that right at the end, you'll hear, "Are you live?" Okay, so that video was 1 minute long. Okay, so this is where I'm going in and why I was a target, and I'm going to bring this up. That officer in the shot, that officer testified because they charged me with resisting arrest. All right, that's 1 minute long. That's when I turned my video off and I surrendered to law enforcement. So he goes and says, "You resisted arrest." We show this video. The judge already states in the trial, "No, don't worry, we're not chasing this." The Crown says, "Oh no, we're going to pursue this." Like the Crown is trying to go after me hard. Then we show the video because I say right at the end, "Are you filming this? Are you live right now?" And the guy in the back seat says, "Yes." We have the rest of the video. This cop was caught lying on the stand and was actually told, you just lied. And the Crown looked at the video, seen the video, and said, oh shit, yeah, we're not going to pursue this. Now they want to retry this. So this evidence comes back up again. Now this officer's got to take the stand again after lying in court already. This is a direct, what they're trying to do, guys, is why they went after me is because our voice, the amount of following that I had, the fact that Canadians had a platform to speak freely, the fact that I was not censored, the fact that I can speak to the people and have them understand it in layman's terms, basically understand what's going on. And people, we are workers. We're worker bees. We understand each other. We know what it's like to be in the grind every day, constantly at work, 9 to 5, or some of us were 16 hours a day. Some of us are 12 hours a day. We know because we're just, and I hate saying common folk, but we are the bread and butter of this country.
Yeah.
So they're afraid of that. They don't want the worker ant stepping up. When one ant stands up, the rest stand up. And that's what you saw. They are trying to deter that in Canada. They don't want you to have a voice. They want you to be good little subservient, submissive taxpayers to feed the machine. And when we say we don't want to do it anymore, we want to stand up, this is what they're going to do. They're going to try and attack you. They're going to try and drag you through the mud again. The best thing, and like I said this in 2019 when we did the interview before. The best thing they could have done was left us working. The best thing they could have done was not hinder our industry out here in Alberta. And Justin Trudeau successfully shut us down out here. Bill C-69 and C-48. We rose up. We went to the streets. We protested. Best thing you could have did was leave us working. You would have never got this. Now, same thing. Here we are. Best thing you could have did was leave the dead dog lie. You could have left it. I'm convicted. I'm walking away. I'm moving on to bigger and better things. But oh, no. They had to go shoot themselves in the foot. So here we are back at it again. And you're going to see Canada change in front of your eyes. And don't say, I didn't warn you. I'm at an I told you so moment where this was going to happen. Everything that I've said, they're not done with me, guys. They are going to appeal this. They are going to, and it's happening. So the biggest fear is us having a voice, and that's why they shut me down. That's why they silenced me. That part of my conditions actually even said in my conditions, no interviews.
Jeez.
For 3 years.
But you're okay now, though, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm convicted. I'm sentenced. I'm convicted and sentenced.
But you know what? But you exactly what you said. It so resonates with me, Pat, because even myself, I was the same way, and I've always been the kind of person. I don't go looking for trouble, but when it comes to me, I defend myself. But for the most part, in any situation, I just move on past it. But just like in my situation, and like what you're saying now, is these idiots are so zealous, like so overly zealous in their attempts to fucking show their might, my authority, is they don't realize, just like what Pat was saying, is I started this whole stuff. You can find my content, folks, going all the way back to 2011. This is 2025, 14 years later. And yes, I've had times where I've had to take breaks from now and time. I got to keep myself sane. The shit I've covered in the last 14 years, right? But I will never relent. And this is the thing, like Pat's saying, is the more they double down on targeting people like us, there are some people, and I guess what it is they've become very comfortable with the kind of people that they associate themselves with or surround themselves with, is they project. So they see the kind of people that would be targeted like Pat or I have, and be like, oh, that'll be enough to finish them off, right? But they don't realize that there are people like Pat and myself and so many others in this country that don't have that. It's not within us to back down or to just bend over. It's literally the fuel. It's the fire in our belly that keeps us going. The fact that you want to do these things. So yeah, I'm completely with you. I don't understand, because even it tells you they don't have like a Machiavellian mindset. They don't even understand in terms of like public perception and how that plays across. But the other big thing to me, in terms of all this and the targeting and what they've done to you, Pat, is I want to ask this question, because I haven't seen anything, But I would like to know is why the fuck. Now I understand why the left, as we in Canada, you want to play the left versus right, because that's how people like to identify. But so the left, the Liberals, the NDP, and the Green, we know that they would all be, and they have proven to be on board with, relentlessly attacking or targeting people like Pat King. But what's happening with the Conservative Party? What's happening with Pierre Poilievre? How come Pierre Poilievre, and maybe you can prove me wrong, and I'm hopefully you can't, but how come there isn't one fucking party in this country that I'm aware of, and hopefully, like I say, someone can prove me wrong, that is willing to show the audacity like someone like Trump and stand up for the politically persecuted? Instead of your 3 fucking goddamn word slogan, axe the tax, which has now been basically taken away from you. So now you got to reinvent yourself again, Pierre. Like I say, why don't you show some real fucking resolve, some real backbone, and actually be someone that's actually going to come to the table and stand in defense of people like Pat King? But that's the thing with the establishment parties in this country, which is why I have no faith or trust in any of them, is because they've shown time and time again they lack principles entirely. They're all about polling and whatever samples best for them so that they can gain power. It's never about standing up for freedom or liberty, or as a conservative should do, which is to keep government constrained. They're never doing that. Matter of fact, they've been busy doing just as much as the Liberals in terms of growing government in the last 3 or 4 decades. And they've all contributed to the point we are at today, where people like Pat King are being personally or politically persecuted. And to make it even worse, it's not that Pat is even someone that's, has a tremendous amount, like a multi-millionaire that has tons of money at his disposal. I mean, they're targeting, like Pat's saying, like I just an average. Well, I shouldn't call you just average, Pat, because I actually think you're much above average, to be honest. But the common man, like you say, to target a man so relentlessly like that, it just goes to show you that they're even like 2 or 3 steps above, even with the Democrats. As far as I know, the Democrats want to target at least the people at the upper echelons of the politics in the U.S. I don't think they even stoop nearly as low as the Canadian media and the Canadian politicians in terms of being so boisterous and vocal in their support of targeting people just like a common man like Pat King. This, to me, is absolutely disgusting. But anyways, go ahead there, Pat.
Yeah, my biggest thing at all of this is, can you imagine if I was a millionaire? They would have never went after me because they knew I would have had the funding and the money allocated that I could defend this.
Good point.
And they know that money talks, and I would have been able to, afford $1 million into my case. They're attempting to go after me because they know I have no money. They know that I am that guy on the ground that is like, I've had everything that they can do thrown at me, and I'm still standing. I'm like that little guy in the trench. As the bullets went by, I'm picking up my buddies. Come on, let's go. We got to keep going. I'm standing up to this, and I'm pushing forward and gaining ground. Yeah. Now everybody asks, well, Pat, why don't? Oh yeah, sorry. Answer the question about Pierre. Sorry, I meant to say that. So
no,
Pierre,
that's all good, man. Go ahead.
Well, no, you're right, and that's my girlfriend is telling me that because she had an interaction with him. Okay. And she went in and talked to Pierre, and he told her, I support the truckers. And she said, well, if you support them, is there anything you can do for Pat? Like, is there anything you can do for these truckers who, supported you? And now here they are with their backs against the wall being persecuted. Where are you? And he says, we can't get involved in criminal cases. We can't get involved in this. It's as politicians, we're not allowed to get involved. There's a law or a statute of some sort. But what happened this morning is I get a text now that Mark Carney's threatening with an election. Mm-hmm. I get a text from Pierre, and then they get the survey. And in the survey, it asks additional comments you want to put in. And my exact comment was, why is Pierre pandering to the left and pandering to the right, but still afraid to stand up and say it how it is? Stop pandering, grow a pair of balls, and talk about this. You got to stop this shit. We need somebody in Canada, in our political entity that is, and I'm really fighting with a lot of people on even defending the corporation of Canada in this. So I've got my own political views on what Canada truly is. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to play in this corporate system, well, then if you're such a corporate entity and a corporate leader in the corporation of Canada, grow a pair of balls and step up to these people. Start standing up for Canadians. Stop pandering to the wokeism. Stop being afraid to call the truth out and actually get in there and get in the trenches with the people, because there is something seriously wrong in this country, and not one political entity anywhere yet have I found that is standing up to this. And I know where you're going to go with that. You're going to go with the, with Max, but even Max has his skeletons in his closet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I'm telling you, people are saying, well, Pat, why don't you run? I will never run in the corporate game.
Yeah.
I'm not part of the club. I can't get in there. If I was part of the club, the shit would have been fixed overnight. But we have government politicians that are on these career paychecks, lifelong paychecks, and they don't give a shit about us.
No,
they don't care about us, and that's the truth. And you're seeing it right now. They don't care. We're gonna go after Pat King. We're gonna put more pressure on his throat. We're gonna go make his family life hell. We're gonna make everything in his life uncomfortable, so that when he does talk about this, people get deterred. Well, guess what? Wrong fucking move.
Yeah.
Because now people are fired up again.
Well, let me just say this, Pat, and not that I expect that Pierre Poilievre would be watching my video at any point in time, but maybe someone that knows him will show him. But I will just say this, and I'll look him in the eye. It's like, listen, there are millions of men in this country, and a lot of them would be that typical silent majority of people who don't even play politics right now. Now, listen, Pierre, I know you're trying to play your poll sampling in terms of figuring out who's already the voting establishment, but you got to keep in mind that every election there's upwards of 10 million plus Canadians who sit on the fucking sidelines. So stop worrying about getting a few percentage points that you can draw from the Liberals or what you perceive as a center, and start giving a fuck about those millions of men out here who are sick and fucking tired of being treated like fucking second-class citizens and told that we have to sit down, shut the fuck up, and act like we're not men. Stand up like a real fucking man, and you'll see there's a lot of men, just like what happened in the States. What it took was Trump, and a lot of the people that actually put Trump in power were the same kind of men in America that you have in Canada, who are sick and fucking tired of all, and we're looking someone to be the bull in the china shop, and to finally grow a fucking pair and be a real leader for once. And that's what we need in this country. And whether you know this now, or whether you're going to have to find this out after you lose again to these fucking idiot Liberals who are just going to play games and fuck with us for how much longer and make this country even worse off than it is. No, it's up to you to stand. If you want to be a leader, Pierre Poilievre, you have to be a fucking leader. And a leader means that you have to have the courage of your convictions, and you have to be willing to look at people like me and Pat and the millions of others around here and say, yes, I'm here for you. I want to stand up for the kind of things that you stand up for. And I'm going to be a real conservative, and I'm going to really make sure that true law and order is actually dealt with. And this is as far away from true law and order as you could possibly be. If there was real true law and order in this country, you'd be going after the people that persecuted fucking Pat. You'd be going after the David Lamettes in this country who persecuted lots of people and made their lives a living hell. But nobody, this is the part that makes, and it's really infuriating me, it makes me really pissed off to know that there is not one fucking person that wants to call themselves a leader in this country. And yeah, I'll include Maxime Bernier, because yeah, he has his own fucking, like you say, I'm not a fan of him either, but there's nobody in this country who's in a position that can actually do something. And for him to use an excuse or any kind of justification that, oh, there's some law that can prevent me from speaking out. Like, just think, would you ever hear those words ever out of the mouth of someone like a Trump? Or I can't say them. Or why didn't you get up ahead of that before even Pat had to get to the point at this point, right? Why didn't you get out up in front, and instead of getting your photo up with the truckers, make sure that you spend as much time, rather than just saying, oh, I'm going to axe the tax, is figuring out who the fuck were the culprits that made it so that Pat and all the other great Canadian patriots had to go to the Ottawa in the first place. I don't hear fucking barely a peep from any one of these hacks in the establishment, and then not just the media, but even in these parties talking about how we should figure out what the hell happened during the whole COVID, all the terrible things they did to Canadians, and how we can make it so that can never happen again. And that's, once again, another comparison and a contrast to America under Trump. Trump is at the very least, right? And Trump might have done some wrongs in the past as well, because he was probably too, just out of touch with understanding things at the time. But he's at least making sure now, as well as other governors of states in the U.S., is making sure that no matter what, they're enshrining in law that you're never, ever, ever, ever going to be able to do this to the American people. And I don't hear Pierre Poilievre. And like I say, stop looking for those couple percentage points that you can gain from the Liberals or the NDP and worry about the millions and millions of us out here who don't typically vote, because there ain't a goddamn thing that you would ever inspire us to vote for. If you could get to that point, like I say, you could put yourself on a path to actually winning, and by a much higher margin than even some of the polls showed in the past. But once again, I don't expect that Pierre Poilievre is going to be watching this stream. But like I say, hopefully at some point in time, somebody will chirp in that man's ear that that's what he needs to do, is start standing up for us. Because once again, just like what Jordan Peterson said so many years ago, and that resonated with me too. Listen, we all, as men, we all have within us the potential for violence. But the beautiful thing about it is we restrain that. And that's what I do as a libertarian. I have the potential to do grave harm, but I restrain that because that's what it is to me to try to live in a prosperous, peaceful society. And I want to contribute to that as much as I can. But you can't expect that men are just going to spend the rest of their fucking lives forever constantly turning the other cheek and allowing themselves to be not just browbeaten, but literally smacked down in prison and put in fucking cages, having their economic prosperity destroyed, their livelihoods, all that. And they're just going to what? Just keep putting a smile on? Be thankful that that's what actually the Canadian population is representative of, that we are, for the most part, very peaceful people. We try our best to get along. But yeah, you can only push so many humans to a certain point, and then things get really, really bad. Let's not wait till things have to get so bad. Let's do a little bit of intervention today and start to fucking get this shit figured out so we can all kind of get back to living something that we might even remotely resemble a normal life. Anyway, sorry, Pat. I know I went on a little tirade there, but yeah, this shit pissed me off. And not just like for my own self, but I genuinely feel for you, Pat. I know the bullshit, and I know what they're going to try to do to you. But I know you also have the strength and the resolve to do it. And like I say, I'll be here, and so will so many other Canadians backing you along the way, man.
Well, like I said, and you're right. And guys, I see it. And, it makes us mad. So we use colorful language. We get pissed off. Okay. The best thing, like I said to anybody out there, the best thing they could have done was leave me working. The best thing they could have done was leave this case alone. Yep. But now what they've done is they've created that spark, right? They've pushed us against the wall hard enough now that we have no other recourse but to push back. And that is something that I said to a lot of people is over the last 9.5 years for us, 8 years for the Americans down south under Obama, and then Biden. They had Trump for 4 years. He made some things. He made some mistakes. He did what he did. But then you got Biden in. So you got another 4 and 8. You're looking at 12 years of left-leaning, drastic policies that now they've leaned so far to the left that you have no other recourse than we're swinging all the way to the right. And that in itself scares the shit out of me because what that invokes now is that invokes the extreme people. Now people are so pissed off now. To get it back to center, it's going to take something even drastic. And that's my fear. And that's a lot of my talking points that I used to tell people. Are you going to allow this to wait and take as long as it's going to take before something drastic happens? And that's where they're at. And I swear that these guys, they play decades in advance. And now that it's coming to fruition that this is where they're starting to lean and they're starting to push us back into that because they didn't get it at the convoy. They wanted the violence. They wanted the pushback. But our great Canadian peoples, led by example, they stood up. They showed Canadian culture, Canadian pride. They showed how we are peaceful, even when getting beat over the head with rifles, even when getting shot by tear gas, getting shot by rubber bullets, being detained and then thrown out in the outskirts of Ottawa. People still showed their resilience and their pride of Canada. But now what you're getting now is you're about to get the Canada that the Geneva Convention was invented for. Now you are about to get those trench warfare Canadians that have had enough, that have been pushed far enough, and unfortunately, it's all by design. We need to stop this political government that is leaning to push their agenda and actually stand up for Canadians, shut the borders down, shut down the immigration, get back to rebuilding us, back to where we need to be. We need to start taking care of our own, stop taking care of people in other countries and protecting their borders when we can't protect our own borders. And not only that, we have a government that wants to keep you sick. They want to keep you ingesting drugs. They want you to do the hard drugs and safe spaces and safe injection sites, when all they had to do to show their sincerity for the Canadian people is make rehab free. You didn't have to make the drugs free. You needed to make rehabilitation free. And that's when I knew right away that our government did not have the best interests of the people. As soon as you start allowing hard drugs to be acceptable on the streets and giving these people a safe space, that's when we knew that this government is fallen. This is not something that's appropriate. Any government that wants to keep its population sick is against you. It's not for you. And now we've seen it. Now we're watching our government who's not for the people. If, like you said, the government was for the people, then Pierre would have grown a pair and stood up and said, this is enough. We're going to stand up for Canadians. We're going to get these people thrown in jail who did this to the Canadians. We're going to stop the weaponization of the judicial system. We're going to get the woke ideology away from our education systems. We're going to start to protect the people of Canada, but we're still waiting.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, Pat, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is the whole Team Canada, the whole Canadian flag.
Oh.
I mean, this is just, it's irking me. I'm sure you got lots to say on this. We tried our best to show our patriotism, to fly that Canadian flag, and I actually, even myself as a libertarian who usually don't get too caught up in the fervor of nationalism and stuff, right? But it appealed to me, and it reached down to my very core, because I did really genuinely feel that sense of unity. And then even when myself, I didn't make it to Ottawa, Pat, but I did go to Fredericton and the Lincoln Big Stop here, and I was just impressed all the hell. And the big thing that stood out to me is like, shit, this is real. Like, it wasn't just something that was happening in Ottawa. Even in my little neck of the woods here in the East Coast, New Brunswick, you should have saw the people that were lined up down the highways to go to the Big Stop, and at the Parliament building downtown Fredericton. And like I say, Fredericton's a fucking, like, it's basically like Ottawa, but for the province. It's government central. And I was so impressed. There's this many people. So it's a real thing. There is a real grassroots movement of Canadians, and I would say in the millions for sure. But I think what it is we all we want to do the right thing. All of us, we're like, we don't want to be brash. We don't want to make fucking irrational decisions. We want to do the right thing. So what we really need at this point in time, and this is where leadership really comes into play, and where Pierre Poilievre is failing, but people like Pat King and many others are stepping up to fill that void, is we just got to find the way. And once we've figured out the way, folks, then the sky truly is the limit. But in terms of the whole Canadian flag thing, so I'm sure it must have just drove you nuts, the fact that we were all wrapping ourselves in the flag and actually trying to create some semblance of unity and positivity, and how that was. It was all positive in terms of Canada and bringing Canadians together. And it was under the banner for liberty and freedom, like, which to me is like, that's not partisan, man. It's freedom. It's for everybody. But now for these idiots that rejected it, who spit on it, who basically desecrated the flag, suggested it was a symbol of Nazism, right? These fucking idiots, they called the Canadian flag, anyone that was flying, was basically a bunch of Nazis and fascists, right? The insanity of that alone, and the fact that the same people who made those accusations stood in Parliament and applauded an actual Nazi. I mean, let's not even go there. But the fact that they did that, and then to turn around and to take that Canadian flag and wrap themselves and call them Team Canada, when in reality, they were literally, it was Team Elitist and fuck the rest of Canada. I don't know about you, but what are your thoughts on the fact that they did that?
You got to remember, these Team Canada wannabes that are out there screaming Team Canada, boycott the U.S. These are also the same people that locked their grandmothers up. They're also the same people that wanted us arrested, wanted our businesses shut down. They wanted to have more government inside their house. These are also the people that, like you said, called us Nazis, called us everything in the book. But now what you hear from that echo chamber that is those demographic of people is, where is the convoy now? These are the same people that persecuted us, the same people that got us arrested, that wanted us to see, that are still screaming I should get 10 years in jail. And now you're asking for us to come and help you after you turned your back on real Canadians who are actually standing up for each and everyone's liberty and freedom. And now you're asking for us help. Now you're being cynical to the point that, elbows up, Team Canada, let's go. You have no idea, ladies and gentlemen, and the people on the far left, that what is going on with what is going on in Canada, they are pitting you against each other. Donald Trump is trolling our management team in Canada and making them look like fools. And alongside of that, he's showing everybody in Canada who are the true fools. All these people that are trying to boycott the United States, boycott this annexation, it'll never happen. Okay, first and foremost. But what they've got is they've got you so brainwashed. They've got you backing these politicians to say Team Canada. You want to see true Team Canada? Get in a transport truck, drive down the highway for days, and watch the people that lined up across Canada. That was Team Canada. And what did you do to Team Canada? You kicked us in the balls. You kicked us in the balls. You benched your first stringers, and now you're playing with the fourth stringers. You're playing with the bottom team, the bottom tier of your team. Now what do you want? What do you want from us? What is it that they want from us to do? Because what we tried to do before, you ostracized us for that. Now you want us to step up against Donald Trump. Why would we do that? Why? And that's my question to the people on the left. Why? Yeah. Why do you want us to step up again? Make it make sense to me.
Well, especially in particular, the part I think that's most crazy with the left, especially, and this whole targeting of Trump, and not just Trump, but Elon Musk, is both of these guys, and actually I'd say half of Trump's main team were all former Democrats. These are people that would have been their fucking heroes. Elon was the left's heroes when he was coming up with inventing the Tesla, the electric car, right? And Trump was a New York real estate guy. He was, the Democrats of New York, and not just New York, but all over the country were big fans of Trump. At one point in time, they used to The View had him on multiple times on the show. They all fawned over him. They loved the guy. But what we're seeing is the minute they'll throw you under the bus is the minute you don't conform. And so really, if you think about it, it's all about power at the end of the day. These are people that, they'll be friendly to you or they'll put up with you or whatever, as long as you accept their power, their authority. The minute you show even the slightest inkling that you will step outside of that bound, that's when you see the true colors being revealed. And that's the one thing, like I say, it's in the fervor of the moment, it's hard to know this, but at some point in time, people are going to realize, like you say, who the true enemies of freedom and liberty are, because they're basically publicly outing themselves right now, but they're doing it under the guise where they think that they have enough people that are going to protect them. But this is the thing I've said so many times before, is if you look at not just the optics of the whole, the us versus them thing, is even just at the optics level, it doesn't look good. So you're talking about the people that are the proponents of the left these days are, blue hair women chicks, right? Middle-aged chicks. I mean, think about who the ones that are representing the other side of that, right? Not blue-haired chicks, a lot of big, burly, strong, resilient, tough men. So what you don't ever want to do is let it degrade into the point where you're actually having actual conflict, because I'll tell you, the left at this point in time is you're up against a behemoth that you're never going to, you're sorry, but you're just never going to win. But the one thing I do want to do though is get away from that partisan rhetoric. And like I say, because I actually heard you when you were talking on your live stream on your Facebook page, that you even said too is screw the partisan. Now I'm not sure. I don't remember if I asked you back in the day. I'm not sure if you're a libertarian or not, but I will say this: the one thing I really, really want to Canadians of all backgrounds and stripes is to get the point screw the partisanship, because that is our only chance. That's our only chance, because if it's just pitting conservative versus liberals, well, you leave a lot of like I'm a libertarian, so I don't identify with either side of those tribes or teams, and you got independents, and like I say, that silent majority. So I just want to ask you, Pat, since you said like let's screw the partisanship, like where are you at in terms of the political realm these days? Like where would you find yourself? Where would you gravitate to? What would be a place that you would find yourself comfortable in terms of the politics or political party or political positions?
So that's a good question. I'm absolutely anti-establishment, but I understand that they need to be there for the governance and the kind of, to keep everybody in line in some form of another. And I really believe that. But one of the things is I love making politicians look bad. So, and I've been pretty good at it. It just took 9.5 years to get Trudeau out of here. People finally caught on. We were after Trudeau way before. It just took a long time for, like I said, for people to catch up. Yep. Now, I would consider myself, believe it or not, a center. I would. I think everybody else should have the freedom. And I've always been this way, but I've been labeled the far right. I've been labeled the racist, the misogynist, everything else. And that's because of the narrative that they have to spew from the left. But I got a chance to speak with a lot of Americans over the last few weeks with what's going on. I've got to speak with a lot of people who don't agree with us, that think that we shouldn't be doing it. And the consensus across the board now is everybody is starting to see it on both sides of the fence now. Somebody last night in my live, and I'm going to give her credit, she was up in there. She messaged in and came up and spoke in the live last night. And she said, I don't agree with what you're doing, but this is absurd. This is absurd what they're doing. They're making it so that Canadians don't have rights anymore. And the left is looking at this now and saying, oh, wait, whoa, Pat King was right. Oh, shit, he is right. They are trying to take away our rights. Even we're not going to be able to protest anymore. Even we're not going to have a voice. And now you've got the left and right starting to come together. You've got the Americans starting to support us after watching this fiasco in mainstream media and what they're pitting Canada against the States. And the Americans are going, that ain't even the case. We don't give a shit. We don't want Canada. You guys are being trolled. So one of the blessings in all of this is you're starting to bring that people back to that center to understand that neither left nor the right is correct. But being in the middle, you are correct. This shit isn't for us. This establishment is against us. There needs to be electoral reform in Canada. We need to get away from this 5-party system where they can bribe each other across the House of Commons and say, well, if you vote for our laws and our acts and our bills, then we'll allot the government grants to go to your programs. So they're like, oh, yeah, okay, so more money into their pockets. And still an argument in the floor, but they're bribing each other. You go to a 2-tier system where it's evens keel, 50-50, then we know that there is at least some kind of balance in this. But we will never get that because we're stuck under this Crown Corporation, and we need to change this government from the Crown Corporation to a government for the people, by the people, we the people. We need an actual constitution in this country that allows us to protect ourselves from the government establishment. We understand that we need to put electoral people in the positions, but we also need a document, and it's the only thing that's keeping the United States afloat, is that keeps the government out of our house. In our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, we have a Section 33 notwithstanding clause where the government can step in under any issue. They can overpower that Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that should not be allowed. That in our government institutions should allow each and every Canadian to feel that we are protected against the government establishment. But we don't have that. No. We don't have that in Canada. And that's what we did with the convoy is we proved it. We proved that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms isn't worth the paper it's written on. It isn't worth the ink that it's written with. And that they have infringed and stepped on every right on every one of us. But nobody understands that part of it. They want to go truckers bad, orange man bad. Oh, left is right. Left is the way it needs to be. You don't understand that. When you start to exercise your rights on your side, you're going to get the same treatment. Now what they're doing is they're trying to do the same thing. You're showing and proving everything that we said. This government isn't for you. This government is in to make money off your back. They are playing a game of chess between the two borders right now. And Trump is looking at us and laughing because of the response coming from this illegitimate management team that is the government of Canada at the present time. And now you're seeing even the right, our leader on the right, or the leader on the right, Pierre Poilievre, he's not strong enough. But what we need to do because of our political realm, and I'm going to pitch it, and I know I'm going to piss a lot of people off. The NDP don't have enough seats to have a majority government. The Green Party doesn't have enough seats to have a majority government. The Bloc doesn't have enough seats to have a majority government. The only majority government that we can have is the Conservatives or the Liberals. All right? We need a majority government in power, and I'm talking Pierre, to change it because, wait a minute, folks, before you start getting your nooses ready and getting me hung over a tree, Pierre is calling it out as best as he can at the moment. He's saying he's going to get us back to working, get back to balancing the books, getting back to getting housing and affordable. He's saying all the stuff we want to hear. Give him the rope. Give him that push. Give him that majority government so that he can exercise that power to be able to make changes within the 3 years that he's allotted before they're back into another election period. Now, in those 3 years, when he doesn't get to work, and he doesn't show it, it is the nail in the coffin for this political entity that is the government of Ottawa, the federal government. Let him put the nail in the coffin himself. Give him the opportunity. Let him have the majority. And when he makes a mistake, I was about to go off there. When he makes a mistake, then and only then can we prove to the rest of the left, to the rest of the country, that there is an absolute dumpster fire in the federal government and we need to put it out.
Yeah.
And we need to change it, and we need to get Canada back to being Canadian again. And that's the only way we can do it. You vote the NDP, you're splitting the vote. You vote the Bloc, you're splitting the vote.
Yep.
You vote for the Green Party, you're splitting the vote. Now, I don't agree with Pierre and a lot of his policies, but I do agree with the majority of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to see that. But the only way you're going to do that is by getting him that majority. And if he doesn't have the majority, folks, we're stalled for another 4 years. If he gets in with a minority government, it's a mess. He's not going to. And the way I describe this is this. If he wants to amend any of the bills in Ottawa, change it up and correct what Justin Trudeau has done. For one, it takes a year to amend it. Two, it takes another 2 years to put it up in front of the House to have it heard. And it takes the third year to get it into royal assent, to get the amendments done. By that time, folks, we are in an election period at that point. So in order to give him the ability to make the changes, he needs a majority. If he gets a minority, we're stalled out. And I think that is where it's going to go. If it goes a minority government and Pierre gets in with the minority government, we're fucked. It's done. It's over with. We're done, guys.
Yeah. Well, Pat, I'm glad you're actually being very pragmatic. And I'll tell you, as myself, as I've gone on my journey from 2011 till now, like I've been I went from a libertarian, so would have considered myself a minarchist when I first learned about, what a libertarian's all about. Then I went on a full thing where if you extrapolate the principles of libertarian, well, I'm basically, and I would still at my mind level of understanding things is I would consider myself even an anarchist. Oh, I know it's a terrible thing. I just don't believe in having rulers, but I tell you, but I'm also quite pragmatic, because that's the thing. What I've watched, and it kind of soiled me to these people over the years, is a lot of very idealist libertarians, and they just seemingly want to constantly spend their whole time functioning in the echo chamber. I get it, and sometimes it's a great place to be, right? Sometimes you want to listen to that stuff, and I still do to this day. But then I've always realized, but I have to live in the actual world. So there's the practical things that we can do and the ideals that we hold in our head. And I still, I hold the ideals, right? I love the thought of that utopian libertarian society, but I have to live in the real world. And just like Pat, and once again, my PPC folks, I know some of the people that still follow me now, because we kind of had a bit of a dropout because of my critiques of Maxime and some of his inner circle. But I will say, even to the many PPC folks that follow me, listen, we're all on the same team as far as I'm concerned. I've talked to a lot of you folks. I've interviewed how many dozens of candidates and members, and I was a founding member. Remember, everyone, folks. But what it is we got to be practical. And just like the U.S., they have it's a two pony race. That's the way it works. And in Canada, we're given the pretense that there's more than two ponies, but in reality, like what Pat was saying, you end up at the end of the day with basically a two pony race. It's either going to be the Liberals or the Conservatives, and that's basically been the case for almost our entire history. So what we should do, and I agree with Pat. Now, I think the big thing we do is people like myself who don't really play at the political level, I'll continue, and maybe Pat, I'll let him do whatever, or choose which side how he wants to play it. But you can say and still target Pierre for what he's doing and say all those things. But at the same time, what we really, ideally, the goal of what we should be doing is try to get the one chance, at least at the political level. Now, we all know we got to change the culture before we're going to get the actual real change we need. But at the political level, in the interim, we want to at least cut the bleeding off or reduce the amount of bleeding that's currently happening. And that means we have to get rid of this coalition of the NDP and the Liberals and the Greens who still are clinging onto their coattails. And that's only going to happen if Pierre Poilievre. So yes, let's keep pushing them. Matter of fact, let's actually replicate some of Trump's rhetoric in terms of the art of the deal and try to push Pierre so fucking far, or at least some of us. Others can be more, centrist or reasonable stuff, but let's try to push Pierre as far to, well, I don't really call it the right, but towards liberty as humanly possible. And hopefully where he ends up at some point in time is somewhere that we can all at least find as a common ground or a good place to start from this point going forward. But like I say, while we're trying to get him at least to that point, right, continue with your critiques, but we got to at some point in time before, because the election, I think what they're saying is it may very well be called on Sunday. So it might be soon. Who knows? That could always change, right? But based on the rumblings in the ground, is if it does happen, then we're going to have a fairly short time frame where we're all ultimately going to have to decide: are we going to plug our nose and vote for Pierre? Are we going to stay home? Are we going to vote our principal? Like, am I going to vote for the Libertarian Party? But I want to know, and which is why we got to have these discussions. We have to make sure that we're reaching out to each other from all across this country and figure out what is the plan, because we all have to kind of at least, and this is the problem, which is kind of a good problem, is, and we libertarians are familiar with this, is it's kind of like trying to herd cats. We're so independent. Good luck with that. And I get it's a very difficult thing, right? But think about what we can accomplish if we do come together. Yes, it's very difficult to bring us all, like the conservatives, the classical liberals, because the classical liberal types would actually be what conservatives would call themselves progressive conservatives, although I think that's an oxymoron to begin with. But the people that say, oh, I like to be, fiscally responsible, but socially liberal. Well, that fits in classical liberalism and even old school type of conservatism. So these are the kind of people that we could all find lots of areas of agreement. And even as a libertarian, these are people who I'm fellow travelers with. Like I say, I might want to go a little bit further, but we all, I think, are at least advocating for the same thing. Let's turn this big, gigantic state of ship around that's heading full barrel, full thrust towards tyranny. Right. Let's at least get to the point where we're turning around. And then once we at least got it turned around, then we can have a little bit of bickering and discussion over what stop you want to get off at. But exactly. Fuck, as it is right now, we're nowhere near. Not only is it not turn around, but Carney's about ready to mash the gas, right? It just like, remember the Back to the Future and put that special color mixture in there and fucking, yeah, he's putting us barreling us to the end of the track where we're going to head off the cliff. So we got to do whatever we can to come together. And Pat is the perfect person in this country, as well as many others, but because he is such a vocal proponent and advocate for standing up for freedom, and he called himself a centrist, so you don't have to worry about like, oh, is he left or right? No, it's just someone that cares about freedom, and he has a nice because of his political persecution, now he has a large, substantial audience, so that now we can actually have an actual area where we can find each other. And that to me is very important, is we have to find each other. We can't just stay functioning in our echo chambers, as fun as that can be from time to time. Sure. Let's do this and figure out what we can do to come together, because like I say, at best, even if we got a few months, that's going to come by and go by pretty quick. So what are you thinking there, Pat? Is that the plan of attack or what, man?
Well, and this just come to me right now, and I'm gonna put this on your show for the first time. And this is something, it just popped into my head. Right, I am gonna put a challenge out there to all Canadians that are watching and listening, and to spread the message and say this exact same thing to your friends and family that are of voting age. My challenge is this to everybody: vote conservative. Okay, hear me out. Yeah. Vote for Pierre Poilievre. Get him as many votes as we can. And this is my challenge. If you do that, and he proves to us, it's a win-win. He proves to us that he is for the people, and he starts making change for us. Or two, he hangs it out, he gets the noose, he throws himself under the bus, and he proves to everybody that the government of Canada is not for the people on all sides. This is your opportunity as Canadians to see it in real time for yourselves. Everybody push, get him in, get him his votes, and watch what happens. And when it does happen, if we win, he changes it and he gets this country back rolling smoothly again. Or B, he shoots himself in the foot, the noose is over the oak tree, and he's going up. That's it. That's the only thing you can do, because, ladies and gentlemen, there is a bigger agenda afoot. There is something nefarious that is lingering in the back that is coming down from European oligarchs, from this WEF bullshit that is about to be implemented in the next coming years. And if we don't have that opportunity to stand up and have this politician put in place to give him that opportunity to say what he says, and I understand, I've seen somebody say about the little child case, you're absolutely right. But the only way we can evoke change to get this country back in line, or to actually push these agendas to get these constitutions going, is we need to prove to the general public who isn't seeing this for themselves to say, hey, I voted for the guy that said he was going to do everything and he didn't. What is wrong? And now we can go to the solution. Now we can get things fixed. But we can also have a little, like you said, a Band-Aid over this gaping wound right now that is the liberal mismanagement of our government and our country. and we can put a little bit of a Band-Aid over it in the interim. I don't like any of the politicians. I don't. I'm not a friggin' fan of it. I'm more of a central libertarian. Okay. I want to be left the fuck alone. Leave me alone. I just want to be left alone with my family, earn my living, be able to provide, be able to sustain, and enjoy my retirement that I worked hard for.
Yeah.
That's what I want. But
Right on, Pat.
right now in Canada, we need to be political. We need to start paying attention because these guys have steamrolled us for the last 2, 3, 4 decades. They have walked all over us. Now let's put their money where their mouth is. Let's give them the opportunity to hang himself or make it better.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, Pat, that's great. And I'm glad you said that because I'm at the point now, like I say, and it's probably because although I'm feeling the second wind, but like I say, I've been at this for 14 years. And like I say, I'm at the point now where, and I get it, people get upset about this stuff, but either we step up, and I prefer, just like Pat, I prefer as Canadians, I'm tired of, as much as I admire our American counterparts, I don't want to fucking cling to their coattails. I want Canadians to be staunchly independent. Matter of fact, I want us to actually step up to the point where we actually show Americans what true freedom and liberty is all about. That would be a great thing to see. But if I don't see something, and like I say, this is for me personally, this is a last election cycle for me to see if Canadians are actually going to put their fucking best foot forward and at least start headed in that direction. And if that has to happen by, like I say, everyone plugging their nose and voting for Pierre and then keeping his feet to the fire to make sure that he actually does uphold, if he does at least gravitate towards, coming to our side of the actual of seeing things. But I tell you, if this don't work, I'm almost ready here, folks. I'm just about ready. All right. Yeah, I shit you not. Because at some point in time, I just want, just like Pat and like most Canadians, I just want my freedoms respected and leave me the fuck alone. And if Canadians aren't willing to come together and be a real show of force and unity and genuinely be a team Canada where we can get back to fucking doing our own things and leaving each other to do their own things, while at the same time keeping sure that we too are making sure that we got to start to worry about our borders too. That's another major concern, but we'll worry about that for another time. But if we don't do something soon, and like I say, I want to see it made in Canada. I want to see a Canada originated, made in Canada thing that happened where we did it ourselves. I don't want to stand on the American coattails. But if it ends up being and Pierre Poilievre fails and we ended up with another liberal government, I'll tell you, I will be one of those Canadians who will, I might not sit there cheer it on per se, but I wouldn't lift one finger if the Americans did. Like, I think at this point in time, that's just Trump's bombastic negotiating style. But even if it ever come to fruition that he actually did want to turn Canada into a 51st state, I'm not going to be very resistant, because at the very least, I perceive at least most of my American counterparts at this point in time as ones, our fellow travelers, at least trying their best, just like with us, to try to save their country from these authoritarian collectivists. And if I have to join forces with the Americans, and to try to help better my situation in my country and my province and the people I care about. And like I say, folks, I got even more skin in the game now. I have my first granddaughter. That's my first grandkid. So I don't just have my kids that I've got to worry about now. Now I got grandkids. So there's a lot of skin in the game for me to have to worry about this country and where I live. So like I say, let's do it. Let's make this a made in Canada approach. Let's make the real Team Canada about saving this country from the fuckers who've been busy destroying it. And then maybe the Americans will actually have a little bit more respect for us, because the Americans don't respect this country anymore. And I can't really say I blame them.
I'm gonna throw this out there as a second part to my challenge to Canada. Okay. As my second part to this challenge, you heard it here, and Sophie's she's gonna be mad. But my girlfriend, I make this solemn vow to everybody out there right now: push this, and I will run in the next election.
Whoa, there you go, folks.
I will put my name on the ballot, and I will run in the next election after this one. I make that solemn vow, that solemn promise. All this crying, all this comments, Pat for Prime Minister, Pat for Prime Minister. Guess what? I'll do it. I will do it. If you allow this to happen in Canada and we push this and we get it and they hang themselves and it proves me right again, then I will step up and I will take this country back my fucking self.
Awesome. Damn, you're so inspiring. You almost got me saying I do the same thing, but I'm not quite there yet, Pat. But no, that's awesome, man. Because that's really what needs to. I think that's the thing that Canadians are seeing out there is no matter what side of political aisle you're on, they've got to be disheartened at this point in time by these politicians constantly. I mean, even if you're a liberal, think about it. Even if you're a liberal these days or a progressive, right? You listen to Trudeau go on and on about his feminism credibility, his cred, right? And how much he cared about the fucking carbon tax and all this stuff. Well, what were you seeing? The minute there's any pressure, well, I mean, everyone that
They
he
pander,
fired,
they cower, they crater.
Yeah.
As soon as
Oh,
any
yeah.
pressure onto them, they like, oh no, oh sorry, well and then they'll retract the statement and say, water box, juice box, water bottle thing. Yeah, no, enough pandering. It's time that Canadians roll up their sleeves, put their stick back on the ice, their heads up to watch when the checks are coming and score them friggin' goals. And that's it, guys. I am putting it out there. You've heard it first. This is right now. I will run in the next election. Not this one coming up, but the next one to follow. I will push and make my incentive to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. That is my solemn vow to everybody out there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm actually another thing I'm really glad that you mentioned there too, Pat, is that, like I say, the fact that you talk, because I watched your live stream and you're even saying, and once again, this is the thing I think a lot of conservatives these days, it would resonate with is you just kind of want to do your thing. So even when you're talking about an area where the left is predisposed, and part of me kind of understands is the whole thing with the kids and they don't want the LGBTQ, but listen, in case you haven't noticed, people like Pat or people like myself, nobody wants to target these people that obviously have some issues of their own. They're going through their own. But what we do want is adults to treat children like children, and for adults to treat other adults like adults. That's the thing. What we live, the kind of world we're living today, it's so weird and upside down. It's like they're trying to make men more effeminate. They're trying to make women more masculine. They're trying to turn kids into adults, and they're infantilizing the adult mind to think like adolescents themselves. This is not the natural course of things for how humans function or flourish, and which is why all of us, no matter what side of the political aisle or on the spectrum that you reside, which is why everyone is up in arms and why probably half of the country, if not more, who are on prescription drugs. This is not a proper way to run a country. This isn't a proper way to run anything. So what we got to do, like I say, is put all of our partisanship aside. Pat has shown a willingness to do that. I've always been willing to do that. There's a tremendous amount of Canadians, all the people who voted for PBC, and there was a sizable portion of them. There was hundreds of thousands of them in this country. So these are people who are willing to put partisan politics aside. So I know they're out there, like I said, and then there's that silent majority that every time I watch an election go by, I see that there's good 8, 9, 10 million Canadians. And just to give you folks, people a little bit more of a white pill moment here is, when the liberals or the conservatives win, I think the liberals and conservatives, they won typically usually around between 5 and 6 million votes is what and that's to get a majority government. So if you have 10 million people that don't vote, but to win a majority, you need 6. Well, that tells you if even just the people who are sitting on the sidelines, even if just half of them get out and join, let's say 1 million or 2 of us that are already out here and willing to pull the levers, that's already enough that we can. So like I say, you don't have to rely on some of the people. There will be some people for sure that'll still say, I'm not supporting Pierre Poilievre no matter what. But there's definitely enough. There's definitely plenty of numbers. There's even in excess of numbers where you don't need everybody, but there's definitely enough of us out here. If we can put our shit together, come together, make sure, like I say, the big thing is to put Pierre Poilievre's feet to the fire, call your MPs, your local conservative MPs, call whoever it is, write emails, do whatever you can, and get him so that he's at least appealing, because you're not going to inspire that silent majority. That's one thing I will say. You're not going to inspire the silent majority to get off the sidelines to vote unless there's a message that's resonating with them. And the message that Pierre Poilievre is sending right now is just not resonating with those type of people. You need to be more brash, more bombastic. You need to be able to say the things that aren't politically correct, that doesn't necessarily poll good, because that's the kind of stuff that the silent majority is looking for. They want a leader that's brash, bold, and has the courage of his conviction. And if you can do that, Pierre Poilievre, if you can do that, like I say, the sky's the limit. And then immediately thereafter, then I think we need to start worrying about, let's get that Constitution, that Bill of Rights, that, get a big enough majority so that we can actually start to change things where our actually fundamental rights are actually respected and adhered to.
Exactly. And people, you're asking in the chats there, guys, why am I voting out? Because I don't belong to a party. And I'm going to tell you this too. I will show up to work every day in Carhartts. I will not show up to work in a suit. I will not show up to work pandering to the corporations. I will show up showing you that I am a man of the people and I stand for the people, the hardworking Canadians, the salt of the earth, the old stock, cultural valued Canadians. Yeah. That is what I stand for. And that's what I will campaign on. And for anybody out there who doesn't think that I'll do that, hold my beer, watch this.
Right on. Anyways, Pat, listen, man, I know it's been going on an hour and a half now. I don't want to keep you tied up too long because I know you're a busy man. You've got your own personal life that you got to deal with, and I'm sure there's lots of people that are chomping at the bit. They get a chance to talk to the infamous, the Pat King. And once again, I just want to say before we do tie this up, Pat, I am super grateful for you and everything that you did and your family for having to put up with all that. My heart goes out to all of them. And I wish you all the best. We'll talk again. We'll do this again in the future. But in the meantime, I wish you all the best with this whole ordeal in terms of the appeal. Hopefully that shit just gets thrown out and cooler heads prevail and you can finally get on with your life. That's the one thing. If there's anything that come out of this is hopefully you can put this in the past and get your life going forward in the way is best suitable for you and your family, man.
Absolutely, man. And I appreciate that. We've been through enough. We're going to be going through this for a while. And the next part now is like, ladies and gentlemen, if you want the change, be the change. Yeah. Be that change you want to see in this world. And if I have to go get into bed with these suit dummies in Ottawa, well, I'm going to make sure that we do it correctly and appropriately. And then like I said, if Pierre hangs himself and he shoots himself in the foot, what better time than to step up at the next election? So this is where I'm going with this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, that's the challenge. And if you accept that challenge, I will step up for Canadians. This is it. I'm done.
Thanks again, Pat, for willingness once again to take another one for the team. This is a man that I have a great amount of admiration and respect for because once again, I know the kind of ordeal, or I suspect the kind of ordeal he went through, and to be willing to still step up the plate, folks, that's something that you got to respect in the man. And like I say, I wish you all the best, and we'll talk in the next one. All right, man?
Thanks, buddy.
Have a good one. So this is the Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.